Jonesy goes with it. Yeah. This is new. So Josie said it's 9 o'clock and we're going to start with the flag salute. I look in the audience, I see one of our city council members from Westlake, Brad Halpern. So maybe Brad, you can lead us in the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job, thank you. And now roll call, please.
Director Byrd?
Present.
Director Casberry?
Here.
Director Kordesky?
Here.
Director Poland?
Here.
Director Lewitt?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the general manager if there are any changes to the agenda.
No proposed changes, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor? We need a motion in a second.
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. It passes. And now public comments. Members of the public may now address the board of directors on matters not appearing on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the board. No action shall be taken on any matter not appearing on the agenda. Any public comment cards?
No public comments, but we have staff introductions.
Okay, maybe John Zhao could lead off.
Morning, President Lewitt and member of the board. I'd like to introduce David Villegas. David is present here. And David joined the LVMWD family on Monday, May 1st, as the laboratory assistant at Tapia. David has a bachelor's degree in applied ecology from UC Irvine. He has 5 years of laboratory experience from Eurofin and has been training with laboratory staff for the last 2 weeks. And he's picking up the skills necessary to do his job quickly. So join me to welcome David to the Las Virgenes family.
Welcome aboard. Glad to have you. And now Joe McDermott.
Thank you, Director Lewitt, members of the board. I'd like to introduce Chris Hendricks. Chris, if you could stand. Chris Hendricks was selected through a competitive recruitment process as our new technical services supervisor. Chris has a variety of experience with over 18 years in the water and wastewater field. Chris has worked for the County of Ventura and most recently comes to us from United Water Conservation District. He holds operator certifications in D4 distribution, T4 treatment, and is pursuing his T5 certification. Outside of work, he enjoys playing golf as well as spending time camping with his wife and 2 daughters. So let's welcome Chris Hendricks. And then I have one more, John Soderberg. There you go. So John Soderberg is our new assistant engineer. He's replaced Veronica Hurtado, who went on to be our manager over at the wastewater plant. John grew up in Oregon and graduated from Portland State University with a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. Most recently, he was an assistant engineer at the city of Simi Valley, providing technical and customer services. John has also worked previously at a consulting firm, Amerio Design, where he worked on a variety of projects, including highway paving, ADA compliance, and pipeline design. Outside of work, you'll find him running trails or races, or maybe even trail races. So let's give a warm welcome to John.
Welcome aboard. We're glad to have all of you. We need all the help we can get, right? And now moving on with number 4, the consent calendar. On page 5 through 68, anyone on the board wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay, we need a motion and a second.
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. It passes. Number 5, illustrative and/or verbal presentation agenda items. Recognition of public affairs and the communications team. We all know what our district went through in this last drought, and it became viral, and we became really famous, our 10 minutes of fame. We had it last year. And I'm really proud to announce that our own team, which public outreach, which consists of Ricky Clark, public affairs associate, Stephen Baird, public affairs associate, and Michael McNutt, public affairs and communications manager, recently received not 1 award, not 2 awards, but 3 awards, and for their outreach efforts during the drought. And this was awards not in the water industry, but these are awards that were given to public affairs people in multiple industries. So it was they were competing not just in water, but in competing in all the different sectors, and took 3 awards at the Monterey conference, not the one we were at, but the one that was before us. It was called the CAPIO Award, California Association of Public Information Officers, in their annual conference. And the first award, I guess we should do all 3. I'll announce all 3. It's kind of embarrassing to get 3 awards at one time, but we have to remain humble. The first award was the Frank Potter Cowan Crisis Communications Leader Award. Established in 2017, the Frank Potter Cowan Crisis Communications Leader Award recognizes a public information professional or team who demonstrated extraordinary success in leading a team during a natural disaster, act of terrorism, or a reputational crisis. Capio developed this award to recognize the men and women who lead teams during a crisis. And this is the Capio Award, right here. And the team also received Capio's Epic Award for Communications or Marketing Plans and Campaigns for the Pure Water Tasting Series in 2023 that most of us have partook in, and we're still doing well, right? This award was supported by WSC, the consultant that provided assistance to the outreach team for planning and implementing the tasting events, including the coffee tasting, the gelato sorbet event, and finally, Andy's favorite, the pure beer event. Lastly, the outreach team received an honor award in recognition of their running for the Aqua Huell Hauser Excellence in Communications Award. This award recognizes outstanding achievements by public water agencies in communicating with customers, legislators, media, and the public and others. While they did not receive the award from Aqua, they were, and we should have, they were a close runner-up and should have won, right? And Mike, I agree with you, we should have won that, but fake news. The LVMWD family wanted to provide its own version of the same award in recognition of their accomplishment in public outreach efforts during the drought. The photo on the screen is of Stephen and Ricky receiving the award at the Capio conference a few weeks ago. If I can now have Mike and Ricky and Stephen come up to the dais for a photo with the full board. I'd like to give everyone a round of applause for our public outreach team.
Chance. No, your turn. I'm sorry. One of the few things. All right, fine. Everybody squeeze on in. Gonna get a couple of these, okay? Right here.
All right, look at me,
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Right. Okay. Great job.
Good
All
job.
right.
Well done.
Yes. Thank you.
That can't be right, so I only told them.
Yeah.
There you go. You got it.
What was Steven saying when he was pointing?
In the photo. I didn't see him pointing.
Oh, the other photo. He was like,
Oh, I didn't see. Was he?
Yeah.
We won. So now we're moving on to,
Hold it. I want to make comment on the fact that the report is we had over 11 billion eyeballs look at our drought messaging in 2022, worldwide conservation and drought messaging, and earned the estimated media value of 125,000. No, that's not what it says, 125 million?
25 million.
$125 million worth of free marketing or worth of marketing. I thought it was a phenomenal achievement. Thank you.
Technically,
Pardon me?
at 11 billion views, so that's 22 billion eyeballs, if I could just.
and Don, it's tax-free too, right?
We don't have to report it, do we?
Yeah, great job. And I don't know how you're gonna do, how you're gonna beat that this year, but we have full confidence in Mike. All right, everyone, any other comments? Okay, number B, legislative and regulatory update. If Jeremy Wolf could please provide the report.
All right, good morning, Board President and Board. Happy to be here for the monthly update. I want to start with the big news that everyone's talking about is the May revise that last Friday was released by the governor. So the biggest headline is that we anticipate a $31.5 billion deficit. That's up from the $22.5 billion that was predicted in January. In this January proposal. And the governor calls for spending $306 billion, which is the second largest budget in the state's history, 1% behind last year. That was about $307 billion. So the governor's updated budget proposal kicks off a month of negotiations with the legislature, which must pass a budget by June 15th in order to get paid. I think about 15 years ago, something was passed that in order, the legislature doesn't get a paycheck unless by June 15th, the budget is passed, which I think was a really interesting move, but it's effective. So everyone wants to get paid. So we'll know in 1 month what the budget looks like. So some of the unfortunate news is that a lot of what we were hoping for in water recycling was shifted from in climate resilience programs. Water recycling, salt and sea restoration, and statewide parks program is being shifted into bonds, and we don't know what the bonds are going to be look like. So what that means is that of the $270 million we were hoping for in water recycling isn't guaranteed, and we're going to move it into the bond process. And so that means that voters have to approve it. So California likely approves environmental bonds, but it's not certain. So it wasn't included in the budget. And I can follow up if you have any questions about that. And adding to the unpredictability, most Californians don't have to file their income taxes until October because of storms that happen in the winter. So official estimates that $42 billion in payments will be delayed until the new deadline. So this is uncharted territories with this uncertainty. So the deficit could grow or it could shrink. We just don't know. And one issue of concern is that the funding projects to fix the MWD water delivery system was not included in the May revise. As you are all painfully aware, MWD's infrastructure cannot provide equivalent water supply reliability to all member agencies, and MWD's infrastructure constraints have created significant impacts between member agencies. And so this $50 million budget request, this could have made possible the connection to Diamond Valley Lake for the western portion of MWD, along with other projects. So while it doesn't seem likely this is going to be included, we have a month to continue lobbying to try and get this in. So I'll keep everyone updated in our next meeting, but this is something top priority for me and for the district. Now, regarding water, what was included in the budget? And I'm going to rattle off some numbers here, and I will send this to you all after, so I know it won't quite sink in. But we have community resilience centers got $160 million, urban greening $100 million, statewide parks program $86.6 million. Now, the interesting one, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act implementation, $60 million. That's Sigma, and Fran Pavley was the author of that. So they're going to finally be putting funding to monitor our groundwater, how much we're drawing from it, and the enforcement's been lax. So this is a really interesting one. Dam and safety flood management, $50 million, and multi-benefit land repurposing, $20 million. And I misspoke earlier, there is water recycling included in the budget. We were hoping for more to be included. So there is actually $270 million included in this budget, but Dave, will you help me? What was the number we were hoping for water recycling?
There was a second category of funding for potable reuse. I believe it was $270 million. That was originally in the budget when the budget was released in January, and so it's now been moved to the bond proposal.
But there was water recycling included in this budget, just not the number that we were hoping for. And what we were hoping for has now been pushed on to the bond that voters will be voting on in November 2024. So that's a little bit of uncertainty. So there were some big wins, but some big losses, and we'll be following this, and there's still one more month until this is certain. So my next update, I will be coming to you with the state budget, and we will know what dollars are in place. The other thing I want to highlight is that June 2nd is the last day for bills to get past their House of Origin. So either the Assembly or the Senate, bills need to move out of those houses. If not, they're placed on the suspense file. So there's these few weeks in the legislature is a big scramble to get all the bills out. Bringing it closer to home, I want to talk a little bit about the State of the Watershed that we hosted here in the district last Thursday. The event was well attended. It was a packed room, and it was put on by the North Santa Monica Bay Watershed Steering Committee, but Las Virgenes did a lot to make this event happen. And we had representatives from our congressional office, state senate, assembly, and LA County. We had mayor and city council members from Agora Hills, Calabasas, and Malibu. Westlake, next time, make sure to send somebody.
We have the city manager from Westlake.
We had the city manager and the public works director, and they were wonderful. It was really interesting to hear what our cities are doing regarding MS4 permitting and stormwater capture and cleaning. And a recording of this video is available on our website, so I recommend checking that out. Regarding tours, yesterday with President Lewitt, we had Thousand Oaks City Council member David Newman and Thousand Oaks Assistant City Manager come to the district and check out our pure water facility. And thank you to Ricky for leading that tour. I also want to highlight a really interesting meeting that we had with President Lewitt and Director Burns yesterday and Dave Peterson with the Israeli Embassy. And we're going to be working with them to host a possible summit, possibly at the district, with leaders in Israeli water technology and leaders in California water technology to share ideas and improve collaboration. So that's something that we're really looking forward to. And legislation, I've submitted some letters of legislation of support and opposition, and I can share those with you guys on a separate email. There, it kind of goes into the weeds, so it's not worth reading here. I want to keep this short because I know there's a lot on the agenda. Are there any questions from the board?
Director Poland?
Thank you for your report, Jeremy. I was curious as what the status is of AB 1594, which is about zero emission vehicles and giving a longer time frame than CARB has been put into effect.
Thank you for asking that. So we have written an official letter of support for that bill, and we have submitted that. And it, I should know where it is in the process. It did make it out of the assembly, I believe, so it's going to be moving forward, but it has an uphill battle because environmentalists view it as a get around for the utilities to be able to skirt their responsibilities to get to zero emissions. So I'm cautiously optimistic it'll make it through the process, but it's going to be a battle. I can find exactly where it is for you, but the district has taken an official support position.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Any other questions for Jeremy?
Only just an observation that Aqua has endorsed about $7.65 billion of project funding through the bond process in the various categories. There's about an equal amount of money above that for environmental projects. And I've heard several times that there's, quote, money for everybody. And I think that's just part of the process.
And thank you for mentioning that. And if I could just comment that a lot is being pushed into the bond. And Dave, do you have anything you want to add about the various bonds? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think it is important to note that a lot of what's lacking in the budget is now being pushed off to the bonds.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there's a number of different vehicles. Senator Allen has one of the bond proposals. The area that we focus most on is water recycling because we stand as our JPA to benefit from that through the bond. The timing is actually perfect for the timing of our project because having a construction-ready project or a project in construction is really exactly what these programs are intended for. So it is sort of a good time for us. Aqua is advocating for water recycling to be the largest category in the bond ask, which is great. 1.35 million, I think is, or billion. I frequently mix those. So that's great. Water reuse, the Water Reuse Association of California focuses, of course, solely on water recycling. They are asking for $1.75 billion in the bond. And there's talk that this bond is polling well for a large amount, double digits. So even up to about 15 or even as high as $18 billion, which would make it a pretty historic bond measure if it does pass. So we're really looking at water recycling and that opportunity, primarily focusing on the Pure Water project.
And there hasn't been a climate bond passed in California since 2018, and normally they're every cycle. So the timing will be right, and it's interesting that our new senator will be leading the charge on that. So that will give us the opportunity to weigh in.
Yeah, what I find interesting is our state had a great economic year, I think a couple of years ago, and we had a surplus in the billions of dollars. And then fast forward 2 years later, it was a $22.5 billion deficit. And because we don't have to pay our taxes till October, because some people were impacted by
48 of the 58 counties
are
exempt and don't have to pay
Right.
until October.
But now it ballooned from 22 to 31. Now you're saying it can be higher than 31 billion.
Yes.
These are big numbers to throw around. And then our 270, which was going to be for sure in the budget, which we would have gotten money for, now is up to the voters. It's nice that we have a lead in the polls, but it's not for sure money like it would have been in the budget. So it's kind of frustrating. And then my main concern is the part where you talked about the MET money for the east-west transfer, or whatever the new terminology, the regional. Would that affect, if that doesn't happen, how would that materially affect the project?
So that funding, there were two parts to that ask. We really pushed hard, and Las Virgenes led that coalition effort to do that. Our goal was really twofold. One is to really press Metropolitan to elevate that issue. And that's really why, that was our primary goal, and we achieved that. By having Met co-sign that letter to the governor and the leadership of the Assembly and the Senate, Met at the very highest level of our state government, recognized, acknowledged the problem, and asked for help. So that was the goal there. The second goal would be to achieve the request and get the funding. But we were coming at it late. We knew that the likelihood was relatively low. We felt like it was important enough to ask, but I don't think it compromises the effort at all. So this is important enough that Met should find a means to fund it. Getting state funding would certainly help. We will try again next year, so this will set us up that we've asked for it, and if we don't succeed, that it will set us up for an ask again next year. So it's really not a wasted effort. It's still worthwhile, and I think we kind of went into this knowing that this was a challenge to get this done in this budget year.
How much money was it specifically?
$50 million.
50?
50.
And without that 50, we're still moving full speed ahead with this project?
Yeah, we're moving full speed ahead. We have a meeting Friday with Metropolitan to talk about it, so it will not slow things down. Ultimately, what we're thinking ahead for is Met has a whole variety of large investments that they need to make, and we want to be sure that this investment is that the skids are greased and that this can move forward with the broad support of the whole Met board. And we don't have any indication that it would not be, but with financial pressure, that could be a challenge, and so we want to try to eliminate that challenge if we can.
Yeah.
And just for a point of clarity, I did misspeak earlier. There is funding in the budget for water recycling. It's just, I think, half of what we were hoping for. So that was included, just not, so I don't want the takeaway to be that there was no funding for water recycling. So are there any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, now moving to number 6, the treasurer's report. Andy Korodeski.
Thanks, President Lewitt. So expenditures were generally on line with how they go every month. We spent about $2.5 million in this last batch. $1.5 million of it was to Met and to DWP. And the DWP $500,000 charge is for recycled water that we can't sell at this time of year. And so we pay to have it piped out through the LA River. And that concludes my report.
Any questions for Andy? Okay, thank you. Thanks for your report. Thanks for the insight. Number 7, Finance and Administration, Banking, Purchasing Card, and Custodial Services Award on page 72. If Brian Ritchie could please provide the report.
Good morning, directors. So I'm here to request approval for the award of contracts for banking services, purchasing card services, and custodial services. So you may recall for some of the directors that were here last year that I came to the board and requested an extension on our current banking services with Wells Fargo at that time. Typically, the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, recommends that agencies review their financial service contracts every 5 years and use a competitive process for those services. At this time last year, we had requested an extension because there was some staff turnover. I was getting new to the position, and the board graciously granted that extension. So now, full circle, we're back again, and we've been able to go through the full RFP process for these services. And so part of that process was posting it to the district website, but it was also posted to one of the larger finance organizations in the state, which is called CSMFO. And there's many banks that are members of this organization, such as JP Morgan Chase, such as Bank of America, such as US Bank, such as Wells Fargo. And we posted this to the website as well for about a month and waited for responses, and we received a total of 1 for each of the services. And it was from the incumbent banks. So we received a response from Wells Fargo for our general banking services, as well as purchasing card services. And we received a response from US Bank for our custodial services. So staff recommends accepting the proposal from Wells Fargo for general banking services. It would result in approximately $2,000 to $3,000 in savings every year, about an 8% reduction in our current fee structure. And it would also maintain levels of services that we currently have, but also there's some enhancements that we want to work with Wells Fargo on going forward, such as, for example, electronic payables. So this would be a process where instead of having to process everything through checks, staff printing out the checks, using postage, mailing it out, there would be an electronic exchange between the district and the vendor that we're paying that would allow there to be efficiencies in that process and also result in rebates and savings to the district. So this is something that we would be pursuing with Wells Fargo in this new contract. As far as the custodial services with US Bank, the fees would remain flat. So currently they're about $1,000 a month, so $12,000 annually. The fee structure would not change for the next 5 years if we continued with US Bank. Both providers, US Bank for custodial investment services and Wells Fargo for our general banking services, have been excellent. In terms of the purchasing card services, there would be no cost with Wells Fargo. We would receive efficiencies by using their purchasing card services. And to just give a little bit of framework of how that works, at the district, we allow for cards to be used for purchases below $2,500 that are approved per the district's code and guidelines. So Wells Fargo would allow us to use their purchasing card platform, which is very similar to the one that we're currently using, and it would allow for us to receive rebates through them as well for those electronic purchases through those P cards. So staff's recommendation is to accept the proposal from Wells Fargo Bank and authorize the general manager to execute an initial 5-year contract at an annual cost of $32,000 with 5 one-year renewal options for general banking and purchasing card services, and accept the proposal from US Bank and authorize the general manager to execute an initial 5-year contract at an annual cost of $12,000 with 5 one-year renewal options for custodial services. And I'm available for any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Brian. But first we need a motion.
I'll move it.
I'll second. Okay, Charlie?
I am on the fact that there was only one respondent in each of those categories. Thinking about it, district doesn't maintain sizable deposit base with Wells Fargo. I considered banks got in trouble because of hot money that could leave quickly. It was over the FDIC insured limit. But the district really doesn't maintain those balances that would make this a more attractive, because the district's money is not hot money that's going to jump out of a bank to somewhere else. Our staff and finance does a good job of keeping that money fully invested at market rates. So just an observation, we appreciate the savings you've garnered for the district through this process. I wish it were more, but thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
Go ahead, Gary.
So I'm concerned that, and this website, obviously, where we post for other banks, is there any response from anybody else? It seems odd that only our 2 incumbent banks would bid and that nobody else would.
I think it does actually play to the point that Director Casperry was making. They saw the RFP because these RFPs, when they're posted to this particular site, it goes out to all of the member banks. But there's a lot of legwork to make those type of transitions. The systems are pretty intertwined with the systems that we have in place here at the district. And I think they probably looked at the costs and said, you know what, it's not worth our time to pursue it at this point in time. But it did go out to, like I said, JP Morgan Chase is a member there, Bank of America is a member there, US Bank, and they decided not to respond. I did have one bank, I won't name them, but did call and say that they saw the RFP and they just decided not to respond, but they did let me know.
Okay, now I just handed Joe, I was at Aqua, there were 3, Wells Fargo was there, so was Star Bank, very interesting people, and Chase, which was very interested, but of course it's their brochure and they were interested in talking to us. I'm shocked that they didn't bid, but that was when I read this, I was really surprised at looking at that. The only other comment was that at the end of the following, after 45 days, we received this discount of 105 basis points. Why can't we receive that more often, like monthly? Why would they wait for the whole end of the year? It's not a lot of money, but it's thousands of dollars we could utilize earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It's sort of something that is their standard practice, if you will, for these type of services. And I mean, even in, not using Wells Fargo as an example, but other banks that I've worked with before, it's sort of standard that they'll look at the total volume at the end of the year because there's tiers. And so basically they'll say, okay, if you have credit card or purchasing card purchases up to a certain amount in your year, then you'll get this amount of basis points. So the 105 basis points that I included in the staff report, that's at the absolute lowest tier. It actually increases as the volume of purchasing card purchases increases. And so I looked at what we historically use our purchasing cards for. It's not a great volume as compared to what you could see. It could increase over time, but it really hasn't. So I put in the report the lowest amount based on that annual volume. And I think that's really sort of what they do. They say, okay, let's look at the annual, and then after that, what tier do they fall in based off of that? And then that's the rebate that they give.
And I would also just add that for the reasons that Brian mentioned, Director Casper mentioned, typically agencies that go out for bid for banking don't get a lot of response. And it's just, the market conditions of banking. Usually you see a lot more response when there's some action that prevents agencies from doing business with a certain bank, like happened several years ago. Then you see a lot of competition for those agencies that are doing business with that bank. But most agencies manage their banking accounts like we do, minimizing the balances that are kept in the bank and maximizing their investment opportunities. So in all my experience and all the banking RFPs I've seen in other agencies, typically get 1 or 2 responses when they go out. It's not uncommon.
Thank you. Director Poland?
So this to me seems, you say a banking card or some sort of it's almost in the retail sector, the Venmo card. I transfer funds to my niece or my wife's friend's daughter. That's what we do. Is that what we're doing? And how, security is good in this thing? What about security? How much money are we annually moving through this account?
Yeah, so right now we use credit cards. And these purchasing cards are very similar. One of the distinctions is they can be tied to purchase orders. But currently right now we spend it's roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a month through our credit cards. So if you annualize that, you're looking at $360 to $480 max.
Right.
In terms of the amounts that flow through. The security is excellent. So as the directors here could, talk about, and the other managers, basically how it works is, let's say you're a staff person and you spend money on this card, the transaction will come into a centralized place where I'm an administrator and we have a couple of other administrators can view those transactions that come through. And then they also flow through to their managers and supervisors for approval. So everyone gets to see, okay, here's the processes, here's the transactions that this staff person spent on. We can look at them to verify, okay, this is within our, obviously our purchasing guideline, and there's controls that are set up to make sure that happens. And also at the very end of the month, we send it out to Director Koredeshi as well. So he gets to take a final look at it at the end also, so.
Thank you.
Yep. Treasurer. No, Treasurer Koredeshi, yes, correct.
Thanks, Don.
Director Treasurer. Any other questions for Brian? Okay, great job. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? Okay, it passes. Thank you. And now, number 8, Engineering and External Affairs, the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing Project, Caltrans Preliminary Utility Agreement, page 75, Alex Liu. And if you've driven on the 101 freeway between here and Calabasas, you've probably already seen it, so.
We haven't seen the whole thing.
Well, you've seen the construction. I didn't say the whole thing, I said the construction.
Good morning, directors. Yep, today I'm going to talk about the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Crossing, or the Wildlife Crossing as we refer to. Obviously, as everyone knows, it's the vegetated overpass that spans the 101 freeway just west of Liberty Canyon Road. The current design actually conflicts with two of our lines there on Agora Road and Vendel Place, a 30-inch potable main and a 24-inch recycled line. Because this project is being administered by Caltrans, a preliminary utility agreement is required to provide reimbursements to the district for engineering support and inspection services to relocate those two lines for the new wildlife crossing. The district staff recommendation is to authorize the general manager to execute this preliminary utility agreement with Caltrans for services related to the design and relocation of the district's 30-inch potable water main on Vendel Place and the 24-inch recycled water main on Agora Road for the wildlife crossing. The Caltrans preliminary utility agreement will provide reimbursements for district labor, inspections, and outside services in the not to exceed amount of $594,000. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Alex. We need a motion and a second to that effect.
I'll move it.
Seconded.
Okay, discussion. Charlie?
What kind of accessibility will we have after for these pipelines after the project is done? It just comes to mind that some 20 years ago, we were forced to relocate our 30-inch pipeline from our feed from Metropolitan there in West Hills. It was installed at the very beginning of the district. And in the meantime, grading had taken place for a housing tract, and the pipe wound up 60 foot below ground. And when it ruptured, the district essentially bought the house it ruined. It was built on top of it.
Right.
And so what kind of safeguards can we have
Right.
that this kind of thing doesn't happen and we have relatively inexpensive access to it? Can we force them to put it in a tunnel?
Yeah.
We can access?
Yeah. The way the street works is on Agora Road, there's a split where Vendel goes through, and Vendel Place actually has our 30-inch main, and that's where the foundation of the wildlife crossing is actually going to be. So we'll actually be moving that onto Agora Road. And we'll also be bringing on one of our trusted consultants to guide Caltrans's designer during this process to ensure that we have access to the relocated lines.
Yeah, Director Casper, that was one of our priorities, and really the main reason for these relocations is without the relocations, we could have pretty deep pipes that would be too close to footings for the tunnel on Agora Road, et cetera. So we don't want to have a pressurized water main, for example, that's 20 feet buried. You know, it needs to be accessible. So these are going to be not just offset horizontally, but also vertically, so that we do have feasible access in the future.
Okay, and so the amount of money that you discussed is, what percentage of our cost is that going to cover?
Well, the total agreement from Caltrans is boilerplate. They typically issue these type of agreements at a maximum of $594,000. We did our own estimate and we were well below that number as far as what we needed. So this should cover all of our labor, our inspection efforts, as well as bringing in our consultant as well.
Yeah, but the actual installation cost, what is that going to be?
That will all be on Caltrans.
Good, thank you.
And to answer your question, Director Caspery, we are looking at two alternatives. One is a utility tunnel for access to that pipeline, but we're also considering a casing pipe. So that pipe could be pulled in and out and then also protect the, because there's a high liability if there was ever a main break failure when you have 80 to 100 feet of soil over the top of our facility. So those are two provisions that we're coordinating with Caltrans on.
Thank you.
Eric? Does Caltrans have a preferred methodology of ensuring our safety?
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, you're saying they're looking at two options. Are they looking at, is economics controlling their action? Or is it the better design feature is controlling their action?
We're really the ones driving those decisions. I think there's also an Edison, some Edison facilities that are going to be within that utility tunnel. So we may be looking at a combination of both, actually. So in addition to the utility tunnel, a casing pipe as well for our pipeline.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Think long term.
Turn, right?
30-inch is gonna be here as long as the district is.
Yeah.
And if it's in a steel casing, it's still buried, we know that steel casing has a limited lifespan. Maybe a concrete utility pipeline vault is a better approach. Longer lasting, less maintenance. I don't know, these are things that I'm gonna ask you about later. Okay?
Is there gonna be irrigation on top of the football field for the wildlife to cross?
Yeah, my understanding is there's going to be some initial irrigation needed. Some of the landscaping will need to be established. We're going to be working with them and looking at alternatives. If there's temporary irrigation, there might be benefits in considering recycled water use, but we're also trying to reserve, as you know, recycled water for our pure water project. So we'll be coordinating with them on that. But if it's long-term, I don't think there's intentions of any long-term irrigation from what we've heard from them.
And they'll be paying for all the irrigation, obviously?
Correct.
Okay. And then when they announced this project, it was all privately financed, but maybe Jeremy knows more. Is it, there's some public money involved in this now, right?
Yes, should I address that there? Or?
I mean, just, you could say that, everything's fine.
It's a public-private partnership, and the funding, the tax dollars that are going to this project, they're from the Department of California Wildlife Board. And so none of the funding that is coming from the state could be used for anything else but environmental projects or wildlife connectivity projects. So it's not like this is coming out of a general fund, if you will, except for the governor did last year give $10 million from the general fund. That was when we were in a surplus. So take that aside, everything else is either private donations or funding that can only be used for wildlife conservation projects.
So initially it was sold as a private only, and now it's $10 million plus private and earmarked funds.
Yes.
Just wanted to have that on the record.
Okay. I'm not on the mic.
Okay, any other questions for our team? Great, thanks, Alex. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, it passes.
Thank you.
Great job, thanks. Now, not information items. Anyone on the board have a question on any of the information items?
Yeah.
9A is customer service water use metrics on page 77.
Yes, that's exactly. I have a couple of questions on the customer information metrics, item 9A. I notice on the customer service water use metrics, notice of second exceedance, final exceedance, door tag, flow restrictor is all zeros. Were we, prior to this January cutoff, did we have data that talks about these issues? There's a lot of zeros in here. This chart, the customer service metrics, water violation under stage 2, which doesn't exist anymore. So I was wondering why the data is presented if it's been, this need has been eliminated.
Okay, good question, Director. So if you recall, through the calendar year 2022, there's month-to-month metrics on second, fourth exceedance notices. It's in January, we basically stopped installing flow restriction devices. And you'll recall that we also de-escalated from stage 3 to stage 2. When that happens, the count resets to 0. So all of our customers, if they've had 5, 6, 10 exceedances, it all gets wiped out, it's a clean slate, and goes back to 0. And then, so we had another month roughly from the time that the board de-escalated from stage 3 to stage 2 of the water storage contingency plan.
Right.
And then we basically eliminated the implementation of the plan, and it reset the count again. So you got a lot of zeros. So we're still going to report on these, because soon here, probably in the next month or so, we're going to start seeing basically another batch of second exceedance notices go out. Another batch of, we're not going to call it a fourth exceedance notice, but it'll be like basically a final notice. So it's changed a little bit with to reflect the new water supply conditions and some of the things that we talked about in previous board meetings.
Then on the next page, you have appeals, and it doesn't tell me how many people filed an appeal. It just simply says approved and denied.
You would have to add those two.
Well,
That's who submitted, and then it's split between either they get
this is
approved
the
or.
total number of appeals filed.
Yeah, yes.
There's none that are just
Yeah,
dismissed or approved.
yeah.
All right, that was, okay, that was my question is, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else, Director Coleman?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay, now customers, non-action items, organization reports.
I will report that the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission meeting normally scheduled for the third Thursday for the executive committee to meet has been canceled. And the governing board meeting scheduled for June has been canceled. They're still in the process of trying to hire a chief administrative director. Marissa, who was the chief administrative director, moved to United Water Conservation District. So the next meeting will be held in person in August. Pardon me. Yeah. Will be held in July and it'll be held at the Marina Del Rey Yacht Club in Marina Del Rey. Aqua State Ledge Committee meeting of May 5th was held. The committee voted to maintain a straight opposed position on all the water rights bills that have been introduced. There was, most of the meeting was taken up with discussion of various possible amendments to water rights, but no amendments could be agreed upon. The committee adopted a favor position on AB 557, which deals with open meetings and teleconferences, made some of the reporting requirements a little less onerous. Favored SB 676, which prohibits artificial turf from being included in the definition of drought-tolerant landscape. They wanted it to be an issue that local agencies make the decision on, not the state.
Local water agencies?
Depending, for example,
Well,
Met has rebates available for drought-tolerant landscaping.
right,
Met would make the decision as to whether they want to include artificial turf under that category. The state would not make that decision.
are they currently making that decision?
No, drought-tolerant landscaping would not include, under state law, artificial turf.
Doesn't say that that's proposed going forward, not in the past, I mean.
This is making sure it is a local issue.
Okay.
The discussion on the water rights bills was really interesting because some of the agencies that have the most senior water rights are actually pushing for a change in water right law. And I think in just looking at the players, you've got an agency that has pre-1914 rights, but they were late getting to that. And so upstream users, mainly agriculture, controls most of the pre-1914 right. And so when it comes to a drought and curtailments, the guys at the bottom end of the watershed are the guys that typically are going to be hurt the most. And so they have other water rights, but they're all junior to the senior stuff. So ag obviously, well, the big issue for Aqua is that it remains united and doesn't, because this has, and the difference in interest between ag and urban or pre-1914 water right holders versus others, and with the state involvement, all of these things have the ability to fracture Aqua right down the middle. And Aqua is not about to let that happen. As in terms of the pre-1914, pardon me, the water rights issues, there's a substantial water rights coalition that includes labor, business, agricultural, and they're going out full on to kill all these things. And we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Jeremy already let us know that June 2nd is the last day for legislation that was introduced to get out of its house of origin. So it's going to be a busy couple of weeks, that's for sure. Nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. I went to my first AWA, I got elected to the board of the Association of Water Agencies of Ventura County. Went to my first board meeting, and it was kind of an eye-opening experience. But they realized that their program for their next WaterWise meeting got canceled. So they scrambled and they asked me if I could help. And I thought we should talk about seawater, because we don't ever, that organization talks about adjudicated and groundwater, and groundwater doesn't affect us directly so much. So we really never discussed in a WaterWise seawater. And all these organizations are next to the sea. Most of them are, Ventura County are very close to the sea. So I called, I got one phone call, so I called our general manager. Within maybe a half hour, he got the leaders. He got Glenn Farrell, who's executive director of Cal DCEL. He's going to give a quick update on the emerging landscape for ocean water desal with the governor's new water supply strategy. Kaylin Simon, who's director of engagement for Ocean Well, an overview of ocean seawell technology. Kaylin's been here and she's a real expert on seawater. And then the third person, Peter Stricker, who's CEO of Seawell, which is an overview of actual buoys that I met years ago, who actually puts buoys in the ocean. And what's nice is you can keep adding buoys, and it's going to be an amazing discussion on this Thursday at 8 o'clock. If you can attend in person, you get a really good burrito. And if you can attend in person, you can go on Zoom. So hopefully we can attend. But the other agencies in Ventura County are really interested in working with us, and they understand the partnership. Raul, who's the president of AWA, is really spent time with him in Monterey, and he's really excited about the partnership with Las Virgenes. And we all agree that even though we share the same bucket of water in the state, we all want to use it to the best of everyone's ability. And I think having seawater there, it's an amazing opportunity to increase the water supply. But not only that, what I'm trying to impress upon them, that those seawater would go through Ventura County, through us, to the rest of Southern California, and that would kind of give us some leverage that we don't have. When we import 100% of the water here, it puts us in a really bad negotiating position. But if the water comes from the ocean through us, I think that gives us some good leverage. So it's kind of exciting. And now I think it's not politically ripe to start talking about it in Sacramento and Washington, but I think we need to study it. So when it does become ripe and they say, get us water, we don't care where it's from, we study the issue. So I'm very excited about our meeting on Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. And that's my report on AWA. And now moving to.
Hold it.
Oh,
We have the director's reports on outside meetings.
well, we haven't gotten to direct, I'm getting to that next, so
Okay, fine.
I appreciate you helping me. I feel like the teacher that has a kid in class that's always trying to help. B, director's reports and outside meetings. Anyone on the board have a report on an outside meeting?
Yeah, we.
Director Burns?
You're gonna give back your time, yield your time. I was simply gonna report on, that we attended a presentation at the Soquel Creek Water Agency, and it was an interesting project. They're taking secondary treated effluent, and they're making it into, not tertiary, they're making it into something they can inject into the ground to stop their seawater intrusion. The takeaway I got from this interview was they moved at the 90% finished level, they moved their liquid oxygen tank from one side of the building 150 feet to the other side because they needed circulation space at the 90% level, which means a lot of piping was in. It was a very costly maneuver. Nevertheless, they felt it was the right thing to do, and they went ahead and did it, and they found it wasn't as challenging economically as they had anticipated. So my thought was that the takeaway is we could all learn from this, that if something presents itself at the last minute, which, oh my God, why didn't we think of that? We have to do this, and we have to do it and understand that there's costs involved. Nevertheless, go ahead and do it. And that was a very important thing for me to see, instead of to start, why didn't you think of this kind of thing? Things happen. That was my point that I'd like to share with the board and the community.
I was going to talk about the same tour, but I wanted you to go first. And I took away something else, which I found interesting, and that they're prepared to double their space, that their back wall can be pushed out and they're all on skids, and everything can be brought to a doubling or maybe even a tripling if they needed to. It's a very interesting area because it's a very narrow space that they're built in, but they've certainly thought about the future, and I think that leads to the same thing you were saying, that we need to think about that too when we build our plant, that it's expandable.
Yeah, and just to add, what I found remarkable was that it's going to be 50% of the water that they need for theirs. Ours is going to be anywhere from 15 to 30%. Now we're saying 30, but it's going to be 50% of their water, and they can expand by more, flushing more toilets and more showers. So they can take on more homes and businesses in the area to get more wastewater to increase their water, and they built for that. I thought it was a great tour. I'm really glad we saw it. And what was interesting is that they started off by trying to get ocean seawater. They're right next to the ocean, same ocean, by the way, that we are. And they end up spending $12 million. And I guess at a meeting, the mayor of Santa Cruz came in and kiboshed the whole project. So I think what the lesson I learned is that if you want to get seawater, politically, you have to wait for the correct time to do it. You want to make sure the politics lines up, and I think that was their mistake. They had the technology and they had the will, and everything was great, except they didn't have the political might, because someone got to the mayor of Santa Cruz, and my feeling was probably people that don't want growth, because when you stop water, you stop growth. So it was literally at a meeting, they had to call time out and start all over, and they came up with this project, which is a great project. And then our tour was amazing, and this is, I don't know if Stephen can get this, but it's we're all donned in the safety gear from OSHA, and and I want to thank Oliver for putting it together. He did an amazing job in having Eric there and Joe and the rest of our team, Dave, and all 5 directors were there, and I thought it was a great showing by us. And the 2 directors from SoCal that turned up gave us a lot of great insight of the project. And their costs also went up, which made me feel a little better. And they showed us how they got their money and their grants, that they were able to They got a $2 million groundwater grant from Cal Prop 1. They got a $63 million grant from groundwater grant, and then a $30 million from Title 16 grant. So the grants really help, and it wasn't a big cost to for the ratepayers, which is nice. And it's low hanging fruit, and it's for sure water and reliable water. And they are limited by their physical space, which I hope won't happen to us. I mean, it seems like it seems like we're not limited by our physical space, but the bigger the pipes, the bigger the project when you start, seems to me the best strategy. So I'm really glad we did that tour. And Oliver, if you're listening, thank you for doing it. And thanks, Dave, for putting it together. But it was, I think, really worthwhile. And we can maybe invite them down if they want to see our space. And I think it shows us that we were up there and really got inspired by them. And I think it shows us that maybe we can offer tours to our facility to show other people. Because we're not just doing this for our district, we're doing this for everybody. So we're the leaders and people can see what we're doing. So, Charlie?
I attended that tour also, and the takeaway that I had was just how close they're actually cutting it. Their entire potable supply is based on an aquifer, and that's in one of the 27 critically overdrafted aquifers in the state of California. And they've been trying to get a project together, including Ocean Desal, for a decade. They're within 2 years of their potable water extraction wells sucking salt water. And so that they are cutting it real close. I think we talked to them about what their potential cost impact was going to be to a customer. And they weren't certain and were unwilling to commit to a number. But I will note that their current rates are something like $6 a unit in Tier 1 and $40 a unit in Tier 2. And that's a very stiff price. So they've used pricing to minimize demands on the system for a long time.
So this so-called tour is great, and a lot of the presentations at Aqua are also really good. On the final day, a bunch of us attended a presentation on how to message once, now that we're out of this intense water drought issue. It was actually a fascinating, a lot of people, a lot of different water agencies and districts participated in it. I have a whole list of notes, but one of the interesting things that I thought that we could do is, of course, we want water-wise landscaping to be sort of the norm, and more people to get involved in it. And so a couple of the agencies have a contest every year. I don't know how they judge it. I don't know, but it's something to, you can give somebody a little, a nice little plaque or something from Las Virgenes. And anyway, that was just one of the things that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that's actually a good comment. And just to point out, we do have a recognition program that's hasn't been rolled out yet, but that is a nice thing for agencies to do, is to recognize customers, some kind of an award or giveaway for those that are, really stand out in their commitment to conservation and making landscape transformations.
I think Padre Diam gave out free one of the districts gave out plants, drought tolerant plants to everybody, whoever just showed up and got a free plant.
Yeah, that was I think Joshua Tree. And so they have, I guess there's a farmer's market that everybody in town goes to every Saturday. And so the water company has a booth there every Saturday, and they give away plants, and they discuss brochures and are a resource for the locals. Yeah.
any other,
There was one more seminar that I attended on wildfire, and I met the city manager of Paradise, California, which was the town that was literally burned to a cinder up north. And they had a very interesting discussion of how to get FEMA funds. And they've actually received funds to repair their roadways, where their piping was under the roadway, and the roadway was damaged and the piping was damaged. They said no one else will ever get FEMA to do this again, but I've made friends with them. We're going to stay in contact, because for the future, it could be very useful. And with my position on emergency preparedness in Calabasas, we want to do something like Sister City. And I know he's also the head of the water department up there. So it's really very interesting. And it was a great presentation. It was well attended also.
yeah. And I just want to, Cindy Tuck, I was in the Federal Affairs Committee meeting, but Cindy Tuck was there from the state ledge, and she was talking about the water bond. And Aqua helped get Prop 1 done. And the coalition is like, almost like what Charlie mentioned, ag, business, labor, and the water. And it might even grow to $8 billion fund if we get wildfire involved. So the action alerts are gonna come for us to support the water bond. And we're gonna need to get involved pushing the water bond, because especially now with Governor Newsom's not putting the water money in the budget and throwing it to the bond, we really need the bond passed to help us with California water. So it was a great event, and all 5 directors were up in Monterey, which I think was a great showing. And we're kind of like I know we're leaders in the state. We're a small agency. We're one of the smallest probably, but people look to us for leadership. And I think we pack more than our weight, which is nice.
Well, I will say, as a first-time attendee, they definitely paid attention to my badge. And in many of the meetings I was in, they asked elected officials to stand up, and there were very few. And they were very impressed with the people that had been there that were putting out like we do. So, and I also ran into one of the directors from Palmdale, where we're going to discuss that possibility of the way they're producing their brine, putting some people together. It was very interesting. In all the vendor booths were pretty fantastic, the people I met.
The Palmdale director mentioned that they have a company that's interested in taking their brine and using it as a resource for materials. I don't know, he couldn't be more specific. But I discussed that at some length with him.
Palmdale's upset with us because they miss Mike McNutt. They love Mike McNutt. Hopefully you're listening. But they couldn't stop talking about what a great job he did.
And multiple people. This was in multiple venues.
Yeah.
Well, then how good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very favorable.
Right.
All right, any other reports and outside meetings? Okay. General Manager's report, see?
Thank you. Couple items. Jeremy mentioned yesterday, we did the tour for Council Member David Newman with the City of Thousand Oaks. That is part of a broader effort really to partner with the city on our Pure Water project, which is actually going really, really well. We have now given tours for 3 of the 5 current council members at the city. We've also been working with their public works director and their city engineer. The city is underway and starting a study where they are looking at 2 different potential augmentation projects for our Pure Water project. One from Los Robles well, which is showing a lot of promise. The other involves a little bit more aggressive strategy, including potentially bringing some of the wastewater or the recycled water from Hill Canyon treatment plant all the way back. And so we're continuing to focus on that and looking forward to that partnership developing further. Tomorrow is a Metropolitan tour. So every year Metropolitan offers 3 tours for member agencies. 2 of them are weekend-long tours, one of the Colorado River, one of the State Water Project, and then the third is what they call an infrastructure tour. And typically we've included our employees for that tour and board members. So that will be tomorrow. It's an all-day event, meeting here between 6:30 and 7 and leaving It will include a tour of the Jensen water filtration plant in Granada Hills, then making a trip down to Carson where we'll see the Pure Water SoCal demonstration facility, and then coming back and stopping at what is called the Venice Pressure Control Structure. And the Venice Pressure Control Structure is normally a facility that you would not visit on a tour, but it's important to us because it will be the site of the first of 2 pump stations that will be built to move water north through the Sepulveda Pass and bring it to us. And so we'll have a chance to see that. You may recall if you went on the trip last year, we stopped at the Sepulveda pressure control structure. And so that's where the second set of pumps will be. And that's the one in the Sepulveda Pass itself. Other items on the calendar, we have a JPA meeting coming up in July. That meeting falls on July 3rd, which is a Monday. When we looked at the JPA calendar, we didn't catch that one. July 4th is, of course, a holiday the following day. So what we'd like to do is propose to reschedule that meeting so that it doesn't coincide with the holidays. We will bring an item to the JPA board meeting in June to recommend that. And what we're thinking is July 10th. That's a Monday. If you don't have conflicts on Monday, July 10th, we would propose to the full board to reschedule that meeting for that Monday. So that would be the following Monday. And then I also wanted to note that the LV board meeting is scheduled to be on July 5th. And just wanted to confirm, I believe that works for all of your schedules, but if it doesn't, if you let me or Josie know that we could also propose to change that meeting. But as of right now, July 5th, we have it on calendar, and it's not a holiday, it's the day after the holiday.
Is everyone okay with July 5th? Okay, yeah, I think it's okay.
Okay, good. And a couple other notes. At our strategic planning workshop that we held at King Gillette, we went over with the board a customer survey. This is a good practice, is to periodically go out and survey your customers to see how we're doing, both positive and negative, or what you would call constructive feedback. And we actually have launched that survey. It's out right now. We're actually getting a really good response from what I'm hearing. It will remain open for another month or so.
Yeah, so the survey, we pushed that out last Monday, so a little over a week ago, and to date, we have, I think, a little over 500 responses. We only need about 400 something to get statistically accurate results with a 95% confidence level. So we've already got the numbers. It's going to be available for customers to fill out through at least the end of this week, unless we decide to extend it for some reason. So we didn't do any giveaways or gifts or anything like that. People, customers just want to give us their feedback, which is really nice to hear. And I don't know if you want to say anything else.
Yeah, I think we'll continue to encourage folks to complete the survey. We will be bringing the results to the board so that you'll see, and we'll be looking at that and how we can do better in the future. It is available on our website. Is that right, Joe? So if folks who are watching, if you are interested, we would appreciate it if you do fill out the survey, give us feedback. We can use that information to improve our service going forward. Today at lunch, after the board meeting, I'm having lunch with Tony Goff, the GM of Callegas. We do that periodically. We'll be talking about a variety of topics, including our interconnection that is important and under construction. We will talk about the concept of ocean desal in the future, and also our interest in the State Water Project dependent area issues that we're working together very closely on with Metropolitan. And then some flow figures for Tapia. Right now, we're seeing influent flows at Tapia about 9 MGD. 6.5 of that is being recycled and sent to the Purple Pipe system. And then we are discharging 1.5 MGD to the LA River system right now. Director Kordeski mentioned that because we are in the flow prohibition period. And then we are diverting some wastewater also to the city of Los Angeles to the tune of about 1 million gallons per day. So we have sort of a hierarchy of strategies to manage effluent, and it does include diverting some sewage that is on the easternmost side of our district to the city of LA. Long-term, that's not something that we plan to be doing routinely because we will be recycling and making drinking water from all of that flow. But for the interim period, we are managing flows in that way. And then Malibu Creek flow is actually still quite high, 89.4 CFS. So we're still seeing a lot of runoff from the watershed. And if you're out, there's areas of our communities where you'll see there's a lot of water in the gutters. It's not necessarily overwatering. It's actually seepage that's coming out of, our hillsides. And so we continue to see that. And that, one last item, I have a vacation planned. My son, I have two boys. My older son is getting ready to go to college. And so it's our final chance to take a trip together as a family. So we're going to do an African safari. And so I have a vacation plan from June 19th until July 7th. So that's about 3 weeks, June 19th through July 7th. I'll send out an email. And what I will do is designate and delegate authority to one or more of the department directors during that time. You'll have their contact information. They'll be able to handle anything that comes up during those times. And I will be available as well, but may not be in close contact.
Satellite phone.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
And Dave, just because your son's going to college doesn't mean it's your last family trip. You present nice trips to them, they'll still want to go.
I hope so. I hope so. It kind of feels that way, though. It kind of feels like it's the last chance to do this family trip. But yes, I appreciate that.
It's the end of an era. The family changes, but they'll still want to go on the trip with you.
All right, good. Especially if I'm paying.
Dave, got a question. 9MGD at Tapia currently is probably 20% higher than last year at this time. And we're diverting besides LA. So with high groundwater, is there any way to hazard a guess as to how much of that might be I&I?
Yeah, that's a good question. When John gave me these numbers, I noted the same thing. It seemed higher than what I expected, and I believe what we're seeing is I&I, and maybe John or even Veronica, you might have more info on that.
Yeah, 20% is a good number. We see that from the total dissolved solids. We know what the sewage total dissolved solid is, and we know what the effluent's total dissolved solid is. Then we can calculate what the infiltration amount is because we know the dissolved solid in the creek. So it's about 20%.
Thank you.
And I&I is infiltration?
Yeah, so our trunk sewer is along the creek, and so it's the lowest point. So when you have a high seepage from the hillside, the water does get into the joint. So
Last weekend, I was on the top of Chesborough, China Flats, top of the mountain, and there's still water coming down from up there. I mean, it's still running, and not as much, obviously, as it was, but they're still very wet and still coming out of the water, still coming out of the mountain.
Seeping out of the mountain.
yeah. It'll last quite a long time for this year, yes.
Yeah.
I have a question of the general manager on the follow-up items. Do we have any idea when the project interconnection is going to be finished with Callegas? I have one particular coffee mate who has been beating on me. I'm trying, I'll get a date.
I'll get the most current update at lunch today, but I recall it was next year, 2024. Does that sound right?
They'll be out of Lindero Canyon?
Yeah, and in fact, the critical path, I think, is actually building the pump station. And if you recall, the pump station is built entirely underground. And so it's a bit more challenging in terms of construction and timeline. That's primarily based on community feedback, but that is what I recall is next year that it'll be.
Yeah, end of the year, maybe beginning of next year. They've encountered some groundwater issues, so we're working with them to resolve that. So currently, they're moving their construction operation to close to Canaan. They want to finish that. They want to until it dries out a little bit, and then divert some of the groundwater into the sewer system, and then come to Tapia. And by doing so, at a later in the fall, we can use the groundwater for recycled water when the demand's up.
So we're looking at November, December?
Possibly, yes.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I'll use that language.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And one more thing, Dave, what I love is the change of verbiage when in my short time as a director there was a potential for Sepulveda, pass intertie, and now you speak of it as this will be the first step, and this is the second, and this is how I love it. Yeah.
It is happening. So I think you all thanked the staff, but I just wanted to recognize Mike and his team. I appreciate you presenting those awards. The drought put some really significant challenges on all of us as a team here. I think we're all still sort of, coming out of that. There's no doubt Mike and his team really did an exceptional job, and so I want to recognize them. Also, the State of the Watershed event, which was last week, I came back, left Aqua early, and it was nice to spend time with each of you, and made it to that event. It was Thursday evening, really, really well attended. Our team did an awesome job to help pull that together. It was not an LV event, but we were sort of, for all purposes, the sponsor and host. And the whole team here did really an exceptional job. Mike, Ricky, Steven, Craig, Jeremy, everybody was involved in pulling that event together, and it went really well. And then last but not least is Oliver and pulling together the Pure Water SoCal visit, which I enjoyed as well. I think the one takeaway I had also was the $40 per unit charge for water. That was, we had to double check. I think we all, our
I think
eyes.
our worst water waster didn't even get charged that.
Yeah, it does put things in perspective a bit. I can't imagine, paying $40 a unit, so they have quite a steep rate structure. The other thing that's interesting, they were very, very successful in getting grant funds. If you look at their total project cost, they achieved and received over 50% of their funding from grants, which is really exceptional. I mean, off the chart. So they did really, really, really well. It sort of sets the bar as far as achieving grants. We will certainly try, but 50% is very good. And we'll look forward to hosting them to come visit us when we're getting closer. They also are following a progressive design build process, so we can learn a lot from them. That was one of the main reasons we wanted to meet with them.
The $40 a unit, but they don't have a lot of units because they're smaller lots and the weather is a lot cooler than we have, so.
Yeah, they have the climate is pretty mild up there. I mean, even when we were driving up, there was sort of sprinkling a little bit. There's kind of foggy. So they have low water usage, and they're pretty constrained in terms of their water supply.
Yeah. And I know Director Pullen mentioned future agenda items, but now we'll get to the real item. Future agenda items number 2.
We didn't go to the director's comments.
Well, we haven't gotten to follow-up items.
All right.
So, I'm trying to follow this
Fine,
agenda.
okay, why don't we do that?
I want to add just one more thing as I was listening to Dave. And, you're not coming back until July 7th. And I was looking at the calendar and thinking, if we're meeting with JPA on the 10th, why don't we just move our meeting to the 11th, which would follow our normal pattern? And also for staff, you're off the 4th, and now you're coming right back to a meeting with all of us the first morning and preparation of all the agenda and all that. It would seem that it would make sense to move it.
What is staff, Joe or John or Don? What do you guys think about leading a meeting on the 5th?
I'll be on vacation.
When, on the 5th?
So you're all for it. How about Joe or John, one of you would be responsible for running the meeting, is that it? The 5th is okay for you?
I think if you're looking at my preference would be the 11th.
The 11th of July for LV?
If I might chime in, there is a regular meeting the following week, so we'll have
Right.
meetings each week.
2 weeks.
There's on the 18th.
On the 18th.
Yeah,
Oh, on the 18th.
on the 18th, yeah,
Unless, John, you feel like you could do the meeting on the 5th?
that's fine, okay.
It's fine.
Yeah, as long as one of you guys are here.
Yeah.
I think it's probably good for us to have, you guys experience having a meeting. In case something happens on the safari.
You might find that you don't need me.
The lions and the leopards, yeah.
Okay.
All right. And also in relating to the snow, NASA did a flyover yesterday of the Sierras, and they are 300% of normal snowpack, the largest ever seen in California.
Yeah.
So look out for flooding. Okay, now we're gonna move on to follow-up items. So first, Dave,
No, actually, I don't.
Can Dave go?
Yes,
Okay,
sure.
thanks.
So we do have a list of follow-up items that we always record after the board meeting, any of the items that each of you request, and we have a sheet that logs them, and we have dates when we will bring those items back. So we have that. I'll send, actually, maybe Josie can send an update to you after the board meeting. But Director Poland, we do have your item on there to come back with information on the ET factors, adjustment factors,
Right.
and to give a report on that. We are coming back to the JPA at the June meeting to talk more holistically about all of the public outreach that we have done for the Pure Water Project, and it's pretty impressive. Joe shared with me some of the statistics and the numbers, and they've actually done a really good job to look at number of people reached, and it's impressive, I'll say. So that's just a preview that will come at the June meeting. That was a request from Director Orkney. And I think also wanting to look at opportunities to do some more outreach in the Ventura County area. And so we'll be looking at that. And did I miss anything, Josie? Do you recall? I think those are the main items.
On the ET item, I've talked to my staff about expanding it a little bit to have some Water Budget 101 incorporated into that. The ET is a big part of water budgets. And so not necessarily just for this board, because I think this board is pretty familiar with how water budgets work, but just for the public and our customers in general. We do have some challenges still in educating our customers on how water budgets work.
Dave, you didn't mention the item I was really interested in, the medical association. Well, what's happening with that?
Yes, actually, good reminder. We actually coupled that together, and we're planning to talk about that together with the report on the public outreach to the JPA. It is something that we think is going to be really valuable. I've actually had preliminary discussions in the LA area with both LA DWP and Metropolitan about a broader effort of all of us to work with the medical association here. And I know Joe and his team are looking at that as well, so.
Yeah, and so the report that'll go to the JPA does one of the new items is basically forming a partnership with Metropolitan and potentially Water Reuse and LADWP to essentially get an endorsement from the LA County Medical Association.
Thank you.
Okay, and now director's comments. Seems like we've already had some.
I got one comment. This weekend's Saturday LA Times had an article about it's just a general comment, the effectiveness of the filtration nets they put at the outside of Bologna Creek, where they say they've caught a huge amount of, especially from the rain, which has washed all this trash out. And they were talking about how effective it is in removing trash from the ocean and how they're thinking about going ahead in the future. Because presently, it wasn't funded by the city or the county, but Mark Pastrella was talking about trying to find some funds to keep it going on an ongoing basis because they were stunned by the collection and how it kept the beaches cleaner. They're actually finding it cheaper to put those nets out in front of the creek to catch that stuff than having to clean it up from the beach. It was just a comment in general on how things work.
No, there's a zero tolerance for trash. And the permits that are represented of the TMDL, total maximum daily load.
Yep.
LA, every watershed that drains into the Pacific Ocean in LA County is under a zero threshold. That means none, zero.
Right.
And there's no way, everybody said you're nuts. This is not possible. So they're doing a lot better job of it. There's no doubt about it, but it's not a zero TMDL. None of that's been
How do you
achieved.
achieve it? Yeah. Okay, that was just one of my comments.
Any other director comments? Seeing none, okay, future agenda items? Hearing and seeing none, public comments, Josie, no comments? Okay, we're gonna go into a closed session. How long do you need for?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes, so it's 10:35, so 10:45, we'll all meet back here and go into closed session. Thank you all for being here, and that was a great meeting. And time is 10:33. Whoever won, congratulations.
Who's got?
Oh. Clock's running?
free, because so basically you guys want to be, you're going.
No.
You want to see people. And then you'll watch that over there.
This is closed session. We want to see who's attending, but then maybe staff, does staff look at that one?
I think staff brings their laptops and they kind of do things
Yeah,
independently.
anybody that has a laptop at the meeting could log into the Zoom meeting.
Except my laptop has the agenda on it.
So, just the idea was the one would be what the public sees, and then we had a request to have one to show everybody that was on the meeting.
Right.
So that.
The problem is we can't read the names.
So for clarity, I was interested in seeing other people that were on the Zoom meeting, not me.
Yeah, that's what that monitor does, but we can't really, I mean, we have to get a bigger monitor, but let me just say that we have an item coming to the board for boardroom improvements for technology, so.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We're back in recording. Let's.
Yeah, okay, wait. We're back.
I'll bet you do.
That's on the other one.
You have that luxury.
Just give us a couple minutes. Steve has to
Yeah.
get back to his desk to get us
Yeah.
back to the,
Home studio.
session.
So we're not, no.
Because I watched a
Can
lot of
people hear
meetings
us now?
on Zoom, and you can't
Wait,
see
they-
everybody
they
else.
can-
Yes. Your voice is going through whoever's out there.
Eventually, it's 140 people. I've never logged on to Zoom. Oh,
I see.
you know, on Zoom. You can see the names. There's only room to fit 20 or 30. On a full screen, and you can keep hitting the right arrow button. Down arrow button.
Put the whole paper together, so it's right inside for you.
Okay, thank you.
He wrote me yesterday and he wants to talk with us.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we're ready here.
Okay.
Yep.
We're gonna reconvene the open session. I'd like to ask the district council to provide the closed session report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board met on two items during the closed session. Item 1 is described in agenda item 13A concerning existing litigation, Las Virgenes versus Southern California Edison, LA County Superior Court case number CV 40159. After discussion with counsel on motion of Director Caspery, seconded by Director Kordesky, the board accepted a settlement offer of $7.9 million from Southern California Edison to settle this matter. The board also met in closed session with counsel to discuss potential litigation. After discussion with counsel on motion of Director Lewitt, seconded by Director Poland, the board authorized the general manager to work with district council to produce a declaration concerning the impacts, potential impacts posed by Senate Bill 9. That concludes my closed session report.
Okay, with that, I'd like to convene the meeting, adjourn the meeting, and it's 11:45, so congratulations to somebody. Great meeting. Thank you.